Thank you all for joining the PhD Prospects Faculty or Non-Academic Career, How to Decide What's Right for You. Joining us today, we have an amazing panel of faculty members as well as different directors on campus. And I'm going to have them go ahead and introduce themselves just so they can give you a little information about who they are and where they're coming from. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start off with Dr. Ann Wiseman, since she's first on my screen.
All right. Hi, I'm Dr. Annie Weissman. I'm the Director of Wellbeing and Integrative Medicine at the Kerkorian School of Medicine at UNLV, where I also serve as an associate professor. It's great to be with you all. I'll pass the mic to my husband, Dr. Ted Weissman.
Thank you. My name is Ted Weissman. I am the digital teaching manager with UNLV Online, and also I am a part-time instructor with the College of Education. And I will go ahead and pass it on to Amanda Hoffman.
Hi, everyone. I am Amanda Hoffman. I am a senior research assistant at the Center for Research, Evaluation, and Assessment, CREA, in the College of Education. And I also teach part-time in the College of Ed as well. And then last is Dr. Batra.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Kavita Batra. I'm Executive Director of Medical Research and Scholarly Activities, and also Assistant Professor. So I help medical students, residents, fellows, and faculty members here in the School of Medicine in end-to-end research activities, along with their scholarly outcomes. So happy to be here and nice to see you, Dr. Ted Weissman.
Well, thank you again for all being here. I'm going to go ahead and jump into our first question. And also feel free to jump in with however you guys feel answering the questions. Can you please share your personal journey of how you arrived at your career choice? What impact have your own experiences during graduate training had on the choice of pursuing an academic or non-academic career?
I'll go first. So I graduated with my PhD in 2022 and then worked as a visiting professor here in the College of Ed for 2 years. And then just wanted to get some more research experience. And so I moved over to a research office here at the university. And so I love teaching. And so that's really how I ended up as a visiting. And then really, I also love research. And so moving over to this spot has given me the opportunity to get a lot more research experience while still part-time teaching on the side.
Wonderful. Okay. My journey is kind of like has started in India because I was a dental surgeon in India. And when I came here to the United States, and at that time, I was also doing or leading community programs like school health dental programs in India. And I thought it's always rewarding to take a preventive kind of lens rather than treating patients in the clinics. So where you can actually prevent those kind of diseases before those happen. And that actually triggered my interest in public health. So when I came in United States, I actually pursued my master's and PhD in public health. And Dr. Weissman, of course, she was on my advisory committee. She was my mentor. And then I completed my PhD in public health with the concentration of statistics and complex analyses back in 2020. And then at that time, the situation was different in terms of aggressive nature of COVID-19 pandemic, as you all aware of. And I was kind of like afraid that whether I will be getting jobs or not. But fortunately, I was able to do two jobs at that time. One was with the Nevada Department of Health and Human Services as a statistician, because at that time they were needing a person who will do complex analysis with the COVID-19 trajectory and the surveillance efforts, and kind of like helping governor office to make informed decision about the pandemic, because that was the new challenge for us. And at the same time, in a gap of 1 month, I was hired with the School of Medicine on letter of appointment, not as a full time. So I was hired with the School of Medicine back in October 2020, where it was a job of statistician, not at the job of kind of assistant professor, not without any future prospects. It was completely LOA position. I want to emphasize that in that statistician position, I carved my own role. And I think that's a main takeaway that we can get from this panel, is that I did the work which was outside of that statistician job. So basically, what statisticians do is, like, when you come to them, they will run the analysis. They will give you, like, okay, this is the output that you will get from that analysis. But what I did is that, really getting involved from the inception when anybody was conceiving the idea. And that's how A to Z end-to-end support came into picture. So that's how I moved up in my current role, like when I was directing A to Z support in terms of research, not only doing the data analysis, but also helping them refining it and holding their hands until they get published. So that was my kind of like main inspiration to do this. So I just want to say, like, just carve your own role. You don't have to stick with what you are hired to do. Just go beyond that. I'm not saying that disrupt your work-life balance, but I'm saying just think outside of the box and see how you can carve your role.
I will pick up from there because that really is in line too. I think for me, I came to graduate school as a massage therapist that had these ideas about researching touch and how it impacts people's health and well-being. And I had this incredible experience of getting to work across the street behind UNLV. There's a hospice called Nathan Adelson Hospice. So I got to work there while I was a graduate student, as well as in some of the hotel spas. I always had two or three jobs the whole time. And in my doctorate, I was offered the chance to be a graduate assistant, which was incredible because I love research. I love it so much. It's fun for me, and I get excited about doing studies and having the opportunity to work with a faculty member. I worked with Dr. Melva Thompson Robinson, and she used to run the Center for Health Disparities Research. And so much of what I was seeing in hospice and in the HIV and AIDS clinics that I worked in really demonstrated so much with health disparities. And so I learned a lot working with her on the grant. And at the time, I was really thinking I would continue doing massage because I love it, and that I would become a researcher and just be real independent and do this magical land of massage and research. And that I was really fortunate. My dad used to ask me all the time, like, who's going to hire you? What kind of work are you going to do with this PhD? And I was like, I don't know, but I knew that I wanted to do research and I wanted to tell the stories. And so around the time I was writing my dissertation and in that last year of my training, the medical school was forming and I was working with Dr. TR because I said yes. I said yes to just about everything. I was like, oh, sure, I'll try this or I'll try that. And at the luncheon where we were hosting a comprehensive or a community luncheon on teen pregnancy, because that was the grant I worked on through the Office of Adolescent Health. And we met all these different community members, one of which was the founding dean of this new medical school. And I told her about what I thought based on what I had seen clinically in the work I was doing at hospice. And eventually that led to a job. So it was completely not on my radar, but it was a really great way of blending all these different paths that I had had along with the research I had done. So my path ended up shifting and I get to teach as well as do research and run these programs. It's a lot of different roles, but it's also really exciting because having the PhD, having the master's, I'm it gave me the language so that I feel like I can be bilingual in a sense. I'm a scientist. I'm also continue to be the person that I am. So it's really fun. And I will pass the mic.
I think I'm just going to keep the theme going. I fell into this job by volunteering to work during COVID. I was getting my PhD, which was not planned. I had a K-12 background, which was not planned either. I went to undergraduate for legal studies and philosophy and was going to go to law school. Then life happened and I found myself teaching. And then I found myself getting master's degrees because compensation is tied to education. And then this one, she got her PhD. I had a little bit of envy and I wanted to go to law school. And so, but it made sense to get a PhD in teacher education. I was very passionate. I found teaching and I was very fortunate. I love teaching. The way they talk about research is the way I feel about teaching. And so my PhD is in teacher education, and I volunteered for, at the time was the Office of Online Education was running a program for to help people teach online. Everybody had to move their classes online, and the person in charge at the time reached out to me after I did it and said, "What are you going to do when you get your PhD?" I said, "I don't know. Like go back to work, like keep being it, like be an administrator." I was a dean at the time, um, for middle school, and lo and behold, I became an embedded instructional technologist, and I think very much to uh, the similar vein, take the opportunities, volunteer for things, soak things in. I mean, I was kind of looking at the questions. Uh, you never know what's going to lead to something and what's going to spark your interest or is going to be the thing that turns into this. And I did a similar thing. My job did not exist before me. There was no digital teaching manager at UNLV. Sorry, I'm outside. Um, uh, there wasn't this didn't happen, but because I demonstrated competency, I was able to speak the languages, like Annie said, where I could talk to people who are faculty in all disciplines. Now I help everybody teach online regardless of their discipline, and I teach as well. So I think, it really is about immersing yourself in what you're passionate about and then also being willing to try some things because you don't know what the future holds in either role.
Thank you all for sharing. Our next question is, what are the key factors PhD students should consider when choosing between academic and non-academic careers?
I'll hop in real quick. I think as someone who never planned on being in higher ed, I think there's two things to think about. One is the value of the experience and the value of the degree. I know a lot of people who work in the private sector who are not really up on PhDs, and they're kind of like, what is it, and uh, whether or not I do get a little bit of stick for the statement where higher education is a little bit of an existential crisis right now, where we're trying to figure out what we're doing. But um, if you're able to leverage your experiences while you're getting a PhD is awesome. And then also, if you see yourself being in higher education or wanting to stay within this field, then PhDs definitely matter. Degrees matter, because it does give you language experience and a level of credibility that you're able to. I think Annie said it best, kind of speak all languages. So I think it's really being conscious about, what it is you're looking for. And I would argue that PhDs are valuable for both. Um, but it's just, where do you see yourself after?
Yeah. And I think also when choosing like academic or non-academic for work, for me, it was really interesting. I worked, like I had mentioned, a lot of different jobs while I was in graduate school. And one of the things that's so awesome about being in an academic role is I get to continue doing research, which I love. And it also gives me stability, which I never had. I had multiple jobs, like I had said. So having that stability, having a paycheck that is the same every month for me was also really enticing because I had never had that kind of stability. Um, I also enjoy the community. It's really special to me to be, Ted and I talk about this a lot. Like UNLV is so special. And what UNLV does, it changes lives. And so the chance that we have to get to work with you, our students, and work with our colleagues, I don't know of any other institution that has this kind of trajectory where people come here from all the different backgrounds that we all have. And when they graduate from here, it can completely change their trajectory. So I'm really aligned with the mission and vision of what we do here too. So being in an academic role suits me. I hear from friends or colleagues that are in private sector, like, oh, you could make so much more money or X, Y, or Z, but that's not a motivating factor for me. I believe in investing in our community and in our planet. So I like the stability, I like our community, and I don't know, the campus is really special to me. I've been here most of my life, and it means a lot to me to be here.
Yeah, I think the factors are, for me, it was a lot of like personal factors that keep me like in higher ed. Specifically, like I like I mean, I guess the kind of shared governance aspect of higher education where there's like you're getting feedback from both people. What helps, so I think the big factors to consider between non-academic and academic roles are kind of what are your personal values. I think that's the biggest thing, is you have to be kind of like not concrete in your personal values, but kind of understand what you need. Going from teaching to this now, the role that I'm in now, I actually realized how much more like structure I needed in my day. I went from teaching where I had a lot more flexibility in my time, and now I work 8 to 5, and it's that structure has helped me a lot. And so I think those kind of personal values and like realizing what you need from a job, not just what you can give to a job, what the job can also give back to you, is really important when you're thinking about, because when you go to a non-academic career, it might look very different than what your time as a PhD student looks like, depending on how you're structuring that.
I think I'm left. I really agree with all that being said. And also, I agree with Amanda saying like personal values are so important and the motivation. And sometimes when you are in your PhD journey, role modeling plays a critical role. Like, for example, your mentor, and you can get some advice from your mentor. For me, I worked in both scenarios. I worked in non-academic, which was the state health, like the State Department, and then academic. And I was actually a perfect example of working on these two pieces simultaneously. Although I love teaching, I really always find way to teach because I don't get those opportunities to do teaching in the classroom setting, meaning I really love teaching. But then I find ways, for example, in my role, I have more kind of like mentoring role where people come to me and I give them mentoring, like, to do different sorts of research activities and how to conduct the research. So I think if the person is willing to accept an overlap and willing to translate what they are doing in non-academic and versus academic, I think both fields are equally important for you. For example, if you have some capacity of, like, you are a PhD and you are hired in a State Department and you are running a program, your PhD will help you because you will find a way to convert your day-to-day things into research that will help in policy making for the policy leaders. So I think there is a way to integrate both pieces. If you have PhD, you can definitely do that, even though if you are serving as a director level in the state health department. So having PhD will be a plus because you will bring a research lens also in the State Department, just giving you that kind of perspective.
Thank you. I'll move on to our next question for now. What motivations have you observed among PhD graduates who move into a non-academic role?
I'll start. This kind of goes to what I was saying before, is I don't know if any of you have seen the memes that's like, oh, I got into academia because I wanted a flexible schedule, but now I just work 24/7. I think going into a non-academic role and like an industry role, I think there is the perk of being able to like shut your computer at 5 and say like, I'm not working on this until tomorrow, or I'm done until Monday. I know that when I was teaching or even like doing research on my own, when I was a PhD student, I would work very wacky hours. And so it was like working on weekends, working on Wednesday nights, things like that. And so I think that there is a lot to be said for the structure that a non-academic role or like an alt academic role provides.
I'll go as well. I think, you know, the being an academic actually is a thing. right? There are requirements, there's teaching, there's research, there's service, there's things that you do, there's requirements that are associated with being in that realm. And I think it's the motivation, the question is move into non-academic roles. I think it aligns more to the values, which I think is kind of some of that's already been, it's been already stated. The value of the PhD to me is always there. And it's just whether or not you leverage that value into what you're doing, right? So, what are you learning? What are you doing? What are you working on? And how do you take those things that matter to you? And then you realize maybe it doesn't fit into an academic role. That doesn't mean you're not suited for other roles. It's just realizing, you know what, I don't do research. Perfect example. I talk to a lot of people who do research, one of them being my wife, and I talk to a lot of people about research that they're doing, but I particularly do not. Um, and so I think it's really thinking about where you see yourself and what you want to do and where you want to put your time and energy. Uh, I think regardless, schedules are weird now. That doesn't matter post COVID. Schedules are different. But I think that's it. I think it's the values, where you see yourself, where you want to put your time and energy. That's kind of what I think about when I see people who are kind of moving away from a more traditionally academic role.
I have personally seen two examples where people they have shifted from academia to non-academia. One factor was the setup, like for example, in academia, they were expected to do like more in-person interactions, but in non-academia, they were allowed to do remote work because of maybe there were some situations around their personal environment where they had to move. So they can kind of like adjusting those pieces with the remote work opportunities. And the other thing that I saw in those domains is that one person moved from academia to non-academia because of the salaries, like the perks that they get. So in academia, they used to get less salary, but then they moved to non-academia to have the better salary package. That was another scenario that I came across.
Yeah, I've noticed with some of the people that I know who've earned PhDs that have gone into the private sector, both have started their own businesses. So it's been interesting learning from them and watching them because their stresses and pressures are different. Like the things that I experience as an academic or what's expected of me in my role, there's those pressures, and then listening to my friends who've gone into the private sector, it's a balancing act. So I think like what all of our colleagues have said, and it's really based on what is right for you or what feels right and what kind of environment you want to bring your expertise, your wisdom, your life experience into, and then going from there.
For our next question, I know we touched on it a little bit, but if you guys can go into greater detail, how might students determine whether their personal values, work-life priorities, or long-term goals are more aligned with academia versus the world of business industry?
I think students should not take this as a snapshot. This is really a long-term activity, and personal values, meaning those will not be generated in the duration of when they are doing PhD. Personal values are really from the beginning, right? Even like when they actually made a decision to come into PhD, already they had some sort of motivation in their mind, like why I'm doing the PhD. So that should be carried over. So I'm saying that it should not be a cross section or the snapshot. Sorry, I'm using the research methodology, but it should be a longitudinal aspect in the view when they take it as a motivational factor, or whether they should take decision of moving from academia to non-academia, or vice versa.
I think I'll go back to what everyone said at the beginning of like just trying different things out. Going into talk or not, and if you can't try something out, try to talk to somebody and like have a diverse set of mentors, because if you limit it to just one person, that might be an undue influence, I think. And so having a diverse set of people to talk to, whether that be your family members, people in industry, people in academia, your friends, things like that, just having a lot of sounding boards of people that can have can who know who can sometimes have a more objective stance of what might work best for you. And so, and then just try, like they said in the beginning of like at the first question of like just trying out different things. You don't know. I mean, I do quantitative research, like quantitative methods. Like no one comes upon no one at 5 years old is like, I want to be a statistician when I grow up. And so like just trying different things is really important to figure out what it is that you really like. Ted, were you saying that you wanted to be a statistician at 5?
I mean, obviously, doesn't, I mean, every kid was, I was just counting things all day long. Um, no, what I was going to say is, and not to get ahead of ourselves in some of the questions, but I think Dr. Batra said something really important about, uh, you know, Annie and I talk to a lot of people because we both have a lot of education between us. And one of the things we frequently say when people ask us, should I get a degree? And we say, time's going to pass regardless. You might as, like, if you care about it, you might as well. It is actually something we've said to a lot of people. Um, and I think that uh, degrees matter in higher education, but also over time, we're in a world that is very different than our colleagues and when they were coming through things. And so I think the experience of getting a PhD and where it leads you is unique to each person. And I think you got to explore it fully, to whatever degree that is. And so I think really that those long-term goals, uh, that things change, and I think this gives you a lot of more foundation, I think, than we give it credit for you to be able to be like dynamic and nimble and move by having a degree and a background through this entire experience. So that's yeah.